Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Agents of MACE. Today we're talking about episode 3 of Moon Knight, where we are in Egypt, and a lot of stuff happens, and we also go somewhere else that I don't really know where they are, but I guess it's in Egypt because they're still in Egypt, so I don't really understand, but we'll get there. First thoughts for this episode. For me, I would say I really enjoyed it. I felt like a lot happened. The only thing I didn't enjoy was when Moon Knight spins his cape around and throws the bullets back at everybody. That looked awful. But the whole rest of the episode was great. So that's my first take.
Definitely gave me like Brendan Fraser, the Mummy vibes.
Yes.
It was like that in one other movie. I can't remember though. What was it? I don't want to say like definitely the Mummy, but there's like one other movie. I got to rewatch the episode and it'll jog my memory. But there's like two different films. I was like, it's totally giving me both of these vibes of like that old school like adventure type.
It's not Sahara, is it? That one with Matthew McConaughey?
I mean, it could be. Honestly, I don't even think I ever finished that movie. I remember seeing it growing up, but I can't tell you what the end of it is. I don't think I finished it. I think I left.
No, I mean, like, we owned it, and I don't think I finished it. My mom just has a large crush on Matthew McConaughey and purchased several of his films that I did not watch.
They get the treasure. I'm pretty sure that's how it ends.
Yeah. Definitely a fun one. We'll get into it for sure. You know, there's one particular thing that's going on that is definitely leading into this next episode, and 4 is the one like everyone's ready to talk about, but they're keeping quiet. So like, you know, curious to see what'll happen there.
How about you, Elisa?
I also thought that this was a fun one. Things did happen in this one, and we also were treated to Marc for the majority of the episode rather than Steven, though I think I'm still just Team Steven. As interesting as Marc is proving to be, he's very conflicted, and he's more grounded, I think, than Steven is. But also, Steven has the absolutely wonderful moment in this episode where he realizes they're in the pyramids of Giza and just freaks out because he's so excited. This one also gave us a lot of interesting stuff going on with Arthur that we're going to talk about. And we get an interesting backstory for Layla. So, yeah, there's a ton going on at this point, and I'm excited for us to get in and talk about all of it.
Yeah. I will say I think that for a show that kind of threw us into these characters sort of mid-story, they have done a great job of giving us backstory without doing like an entire flashback episode or anything like that. Because that's what I was nervous about, and I'm not a huge fan of that. So
yeah, it's kind of going on its own course. It's like what you said. It's like we're getting like a backstory without a backstory.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not like, because we still haven't even seen like the moment where Marc dies and you know, kind of everything else happens.
Right.
It's just kind of like it happened, like just deal with that and go with what they're doing.
There was one bit of really awkwardly shoved in backstory that I'll try to remember to bring up when we get to it. But I was like, what? What is that? And then by the end of the episode, I was like, oh, I mean, it makes sense now, but it still didn't really go with what they were talking about, like, at all. It just came totally out of left field. If I was smarter, I'd have been like, okay, this is clearly setting up something later.
Well, to kind of kick off the episode, it does sort of pick up where we left off last week, which now we're in Egypt. I did want to say, and this is something that happens a couple times through this episode, it's interesting that we are getting, before we were getting all Steven episodes, now we're getting a Marc episode. But the same sort of thing happens to Mark that happens to Steven a couple times, where he like blacks out and wakes back up, and it's Mark, but he like doesn't understand how
like what
he like killed everybody or got away or whatever. So I thought that
how did I get in this cab?
Yeah, I was like, this is interesting. Like, what's going on here? I mean, it's very obvious that, and if you look at anything about the show, everyone is like, oh, there's more personalities, there's more personalities. And it's like, well, duh. Like, right, like we have to assume that yes, there's at least one other personality that is now taking over.
I did put some research into that. So, there's definitely multiple. And I'm not sure how accurate it is, but it's more than 3. So, and I like that. I mean, this has given me the vibes to go watch like Split again. I don't know if either of you have seen that, but I mean, that is just fantastic. And like, and we didn't even get to really see all of the personalities there, in that film. So the question is like, how many will we actually see?
Yeah, I feel like if they do too many, it's going to be too much, right? Like,
yeah. And there may not actually be that many. I think I saw 4 or 5 listed. Makes me wonder, are we going to get some kind of like Doctor Strange-esque mirror dimension where they all kind of come together, and have a conversation? Like, that would be kind of cool, just kind of seeing 5 versions of Oscar Isaac having conversation.
What's that? In the Flash show, they have that with the Wells. There's like a bunch of them. They're just all the same guy from different like worlds or whatever. I could see something. I feel like that's a little tacky for where they're taking this show, but I could see it maybe like he looks into a shattered mirror and there's a bunch of different versions of himself all arguing with each other. I mean, I think that's kind of like the MO for this show is anytime whoever's in charge of the body needs to speak to somebody, there just happens to be a mirror that he can easily like chit chat with the other person. I do feel like Steven kind of, now, I'm also team Steven, but I feel like a couple times this episode, Steven puts Mark in a dangerous situation by distracting Mark by like speaking to him. And it's like, Steven, stop it. But there's also some funny times where Steven takes over and then he's like, no, Mark, take over, please. So it's funny that like now we're getting this almost like a buddy cop movie, but there's only one cop.
Yeah. But the question now is like, Mark has all this confidence, like, you have to let me take over. Like, if we're going to survive this, you've got to let me do it. But is it really Mark? Or does Mark get in there and he thinks he's in control, but there's someone else there that's kind of like, you're doing okay, but I can do better.
Well,
so like the third personality seems like kind of a psychopath.
Yeah.
Because every time Mark comes back and it's been the one that we don't know, and Steven's like, it wasn't me, I swear to God. It's like they have wreaked horrific violence every single time. That's kind of scary.
Yeah.
And it makes you think, like, was that who Steven was speaking to in the first episode? Like, was that Mark that was taking over and killing all those people, let's be real? Or was that this other version? Like, we don't really know. He never said his name. So I think it's interesting for sure. But before we get too far, there's another character that kind of we get a little bit more backstory, and it kind of branches away from the comic, but it brings comic book characters in. And that is learning a little bit about Layla's past. We learned that her father was an archaeologist that took her on digs. It looks like from the bit of research that I did on that, it may be referring to Dr. Peter I'm not going to say this right. Alraune. Alraune. But this character, I believe, is somebody else's father in the comics. It's not Layla's father. So I think this is kind of like merging two or a couple characters. I mean, even with the Layla character, we've already seen that, right? Like it's sort of merging two characters, both the comic book Mark Spector's wife and like a love interest or something from the comics, like kind of merging those characters together. So this is maybe just that, like they didn't want to muddy the waters with too many characters, so they kind of pushed some people together. But in doing that, kind of alluding to where Dr. Peter was at the time of his death, in the comics, he's actually killed when he discovers Khonshu's lost tomb. And in this episode, later on, Arthur kind of alludes to the fact that maybe Marc had something to do with Layla's father's death. So this could be a way for them to kind of bridge the gap of, here's this character that we had that like we wanted to put in the show, but he didn't really go with anyone, so we're going to make him Layla's father. And that will be, I mean, personally, I feel like Marc maybe killed him, not on purpose, but maybe on accident, or maybe Khonshu took over and his other personality killed Peter. I don't know, but I have a feeling that's where we're kind of going with what Arthur was saying. So it's exciting to kind of see them do that, to kind of like pull those more off the wall characters and figure out a way to put them in without having too many people. Like, I think we talked about that in Falcon and Winter Soldier, where it was like they got dangerously close. They just kept shoving more and more characters in, and it was like, I don't know who to pay attention to or who's important. Like, you're just hitting me with too many names every episode. So I think they're doing better about that. And they're kind of picking and choosing or combining characters to kind of like give us that, oh, I remember that person from the comics. Although I don't remember anyone from these comics because I've never read them. But for those of you out there who are big Moon Knight fans, let us know what you think about this. Like, me, I don't know, maybe you want your separate characters, but I don't know. I think it's a clever way to do that.
This episode also had a lot to do with Marc and Layla's relationship. We still don't know exactly what's happened between them that's led them to divorce, but we found out this episode she doesn't, or he never told her about his dissociative identity disorder because, as he put it, he'd been handling it until recently, and kind of implied that that's why he just disappeared a few months ago, is because he was losing control. But also, we can tell through their separate interactions that Layla likes Marc, but Steven is the one who still likes Layla. Mm-hmm. Like, is distractedly in love with Layla already. And Marc still, like, obviously cares for her. He's trying to, like, protect her and things like that. But poor Steven, he's got it bad.
He's got to have that steak dinner date. Wouldn't that be the most epic, like, finale after credit, mid credit scene? Is he's actually sitting down with someone having a steak dinner?
Oh,
you know, I wish they would do some in credit scenes in this show.
I know. I really thought we were getting one this episode. Just the way it kind of ended and had this like pause. I was like, we're getting one.
Yeah.
Yes. And then it was
nope.
Like, no.
Psych. Nope. Nothing happens. Not even
also
cool like Hawkeye moment where
right
at the very end of the credits is different.
Even like we haven't really talked much about the what we see within the credits, but you know, there's all this clue to another identity. But if you look when you see Oscar Isaac in the end credits, we're seeing like 3 faces. Mm-hmm. So it could be hinting like we're only going to see 3 versions.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Yeah. I was trying to figure that out with at the very end when it shows Moon Knight and then it shows Mr. Knight, it quickly like flashes something else, but I couldn't pause it right to like tell if it was anything or if it was just kind of like it was like nonsense just to fill the screen, whatever. But also the very first one that you see is like a human head that's slowly being covered with the wraps. And I was like, is that maybe a different thing? Like, it's like, obviously as you watch it, you're just like, oh, that's him putting on the suit. But like, maybe it's not. Maybe that is a suit. There's like some weird, scary wrap man suit. I don't know. So I guess hopefully we'll find out next episode.
We're halfway through already. 3 more episodes. So
I think the most excited when we heard about the other gods, because that's something that we'd kind of mentioned before, like, oh, are we going to see other gods? And sure enough, I mean, granted, no, we did not see any other gods, but we saw their avatars, and so it kind of explains, like, oh yeah, all the Egyptian gods were real, and they also have avatars, so maybe we'll see them at some point, like in their godly form.
If not here, maybe Thor: Love and Thunder.
Yeah, they did talk about where they live.
Was that the the override or over something?
Yes.
What was it called? Was it
Overvoid?
Overvoid.
Yeah,
that's right. Overvoid.
And I was like, oh, that's weird.
Yeah. So
that sounds inviting.
It seems like it has been mentioned in the Marvel comics, namely in the run of Moon Knight comics. It is similar to Asgard in the sense that, like, all the Norse gods live in Asgard. This is sort of that, but for the Egyptian gods. The MCU has really hammered in the whole 9 realms thing. I'm interested in how this fits in that. I don't know that the Overvoid is one of the 9 realms, so I wonder if it exists within one of those 9 realms, or if there are more than 9 realms. I don't know.
Hard to say.
More questions.
Yeah. Like, going into these things now, I just almost expect, like, we would see the watcher kind of observing everything of what's going on.
Oh yeah.
Just going into these unique type places, like, because you think of like Thor, you think of the mirror dimension, all of that. I would expect we're going to see more of this.
Yeah.
And they'll be coming here again. Which, I don't know. Is this like the Overvoid? Is this a place you could take control of and do things? Is this still very curious to see, like, what our main villain is really going to be up to.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's also interesting because, like, Khonshu kind of hangs out with Marc and Steven. Like,
yeah,
I don't know that he's hanging out in the Overvoid. So, do the other gods hang out there and talk to their avatars less, or are they also just kind of always there?
They did say that was luxurious and opulent, so maybe they're just like, who cares? They can. We'll talk to them when we need them. But this scene with all the gods is where we get the really awkward bit of backstory that I felt was inappropriately just shoved in that made no sense in the context. It's where the other gods gang up on Khonshu and they're like, "You can't change the sky again," and I was like, "We weren't even talking about that."
Yeah.
And then at the end, I was like, "Oh,
yeah,
again."
I felt like, yes, that was sort of shoehorned in there. I also felt like the weird, like, Khonshu love story was kind of shoved in there. I was like, this, what does this really have to do with anything?
Khonshu and Hathor.
Right. I'm wondering if that was just a way for them to like have one of the gods side with Khonshu. Although she doesn't really seem to do anything, right? Like she was just like, yeah, do this and I'll help you. And then I assume they do what she said and it doesn't end well for Khonshu. So I don't know. I felt like that was a weird sort of shoehorned in there moment, but whatever. I mean, hopefully it means that we'll get more of these Egyptian gods showing up doing stuff.
Yeah. The whole aesthetic of this place, I'm looking at an image and just kind of reflecting on like, you know, how they enter and like how they sit, definitely gives me Blade vibes.
Yeah.
Like it'd be the same if like Blade's kind of meeting like, you know, the elders in the vampire world. I don't know.
I mean, they are kind of creepy.
It's a little weird. And they are so instantly accepting that Arthur's not planning anything. Just because Arthur's like, I think that this avatar is sick in his head. And they're all like, is that true? Yes, I'm very sorry.
Also,
like, okay, well, clearly Arthur's not doing anything wrong, so...
Also, he's like, oh, is it a crime to explore the sand?
In some cases it is.
Right, I was like, well, yeah, if you're looking for the like tomb that they don't want you to find, like what I don't understand.
You were not allowed to just excavate.
Right.
You can't do that.
So I agree. It felt very fast that they jumped.
Yeah.
They jumped on his side over Khonshu, and especially with the how they kind of started it by saying like, oh, Khonshu, you've done this before, like you're on thin ice, and then the only thing he did before was change the sky. Like I don't see that as that big of a deal. Like
it must be to them though.
Yeah, I guess
it's almost like we need the mini adventures of the Egyptian gods, and
right, yeah,
we can watch.
How did they all catch beef with each other?
Yeah,
Khonshu. Well, kind of moving forward from here, Marc finds out that he needs to go and find this sarcophagus of Sinfu, I think. Yeah. Who
I think so, yes.
should have a map sort of to where Amit's tomb is. I feel like there should be an easier way for Marc to find where the tomb is, but I don't know what that is. I just feel like this seems like a weird roundabout way to also get to the tomb. But he's got to go find the sarcophagus on the black market. We had a very tongue-in-cheek moment at the beginning of the episode where Layla explains how she sells things, or she takes things back from the black market. So it was like, ooh, foreshadowing. Then they have to go meet Bleak, who is one of Mogart's men. This all sounds made up, but these are the names. It's interesting. One of the guys mentions that Mogart is happy to see Layla after Madripoor, so we get a Madripoor reference, which I guess connects this to Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It's more like it solidifies Madripoor as an actual place in the MCU.
I feel like it's just them setting up like we're probably going to get a series that's all going to be in Madripoor.
Yeah.
Or, you know, I mean, and it could be like setting up mutants and doing something there. I just think it's them just saying, yes, this is in our world and it's going to be here for a long time.
That's what I took it as well.
Yeah.
But after the episode and kind of diving in a little bit on some of the stuff, I feel like I saw a lot of people that are like, oh, this ties it in with Falcon and Winter Soldier. Oh, look, Falcon and Winter Soldier reference. And it was like, Madripoor is a place, though. It's not like an only Falcon and the Winter Soldier thing.
Right.
So,
I mean, it's only going to connect if like Bucky shows
right,
up.
or they were like, oh, we met with Sharon or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Or Sharon shows up and tries to get into the black market here.
But that was exciting to now Madripoor is, I feel like, official.
I think that's really cool. And we get to meet Midnight Man.
We do get to meet Midnight Man, which just, I don't know. It's not a great name. Could come up with something better. But that whole series of events is odd because I feel like we're already getting to the point where it seems a little rushed.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly for the fact that like they came all this way to get this sarcophagus, then they get the sarcophagus, or they find the sarcophagus, but they have to like solve a riddle. And so it's like, okay, Steven, come help solve the riddle. Cool. All right. I'm into it.
Steven's like, puzzles.
Right. And then Arthur shows up, chants a bunch of words, and makes the sarcophagus explode. But really, it doesn't look like he does any like damage to the sarcophagus, which was strange. So then, they have to go over and swipe all the broken pieces of the map to put it together. But before that happens, there's obviously a big fight. We get to see Khonshu, again, sort of on the nose, mentions that the suit is self-healing. So we get to see Marc get stabbed and run through with a bunch of spears over and over again, but then seemingly come out of it completely fine. We also see that his moon orangs, or whatever you want to call them, are more like Mjolnir in a sense, where he can like throw them and they stick into people and they just hold his hand out and they come back. But before, he had to pick it up off the ground. So...
yeah, I didn't even like. To me, it was like they're basically batarangs.
Yeah,
I mean, like there's a moment he throws a couple and knocks guns out of some people's hands, and
then he throws others and they stick in people. But then also he always has them in his hands. But how many does he have? I mean, his chest isn't an endless void of metal moons.
But that it is. It is.
That's just
He's the Moon Knight.
It's like the new nanotech,
I guess,
just works.
Yeah, it's just there. They're just there.
I kind of think that in this scene we heard the third personality speak for a minute, because it's something that Oscar Isaac said, but he's used like a standard American accent for Marc. He's used a British accent for Steven. And then it could just be that he read his lines weird or something, but it sounded like a different accent for one line, and it was whenever he was doing super duper violent stuff, and it was kind of like a throwaway thing that he said too. But I was just like, I even backed it up to make sure I hadn't heard wrong, and yeah, he definitely sounded different. So I think maybe personality number 3 made a guest appearance here.
It's possible.
Yeah,
maybe
especially
even
since
earlier.
He's just like killing folks with those stick things,
and at one point he's not even just killing them; he's like breaking their arms and knees and legs, and it's like, whoa, dude.
I'm wondering earlier in the episode when we kind of see, what we think is Marc have like the baseball cap on in that kind of moment. I'm wondering if that's Marc.
Yeah, I saw something that said that the way the cap sits on his head, it looks a lot like Steven's Mr. Knight mask, and like there's kind of like a ruffle that makes a half moon. But again, seeing that like in this episode we learn that, hey, it's not just Steven that like can pass out and wake up and be somebody else or be somewhere else. It's like happens to Marc too. So unless it's literally Khonshu taking over his body, it has to be somebody else. And the fact that it took basically one episode for them to show us Marc another episode to show Mark and Steven
Mm-hmm.
dealing with each other, and this episode to show like, hey, there may be another one. Like in the next episode, we're definitely going to find out for sure who the third or fourth or fifth or however many there are versions there are. I just really hope that we do get a cool, like, oh, there's a bunch of different Moon Knight suits. Like, do that. I'm into that.
Yeah, I want to see the variations of the suits and like what they're all capable of. Speaking of, I think we'll see Midnight Man pretty much for the remaining of this season. I wonder if we'll see him in his suit.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I feel like they've tried really hard to make sure that everyone gets to wear their comic accurate suit at least once. So
also forgot that the actor that portrays him passed away beginning of the year.
Yeah.
I don't know why I forgot that, because immediately when I see him, I'm like, oh, it's the young Hannibal Lecter, and then I was looking up and I was like, oh, I forgot all of that happened. That was really sad.
Yeah. So on that note, I wonder if this show has changed at all from what their original plan was. Like if they were going to, like, I don't know, maybe from the beginning it was like a 1-season deal for him and his character gets killed off, but
it's either that, I mean, or if the suit is introduced in the end and this character does go into a next season, like, not necessarily like we have to ever see him without, he can always just be in the suit and they can recast, and do a voice alteration.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Midnight Man, there's kind of like a in-your-face nod to Midnight Man when Layla and Mark are leaving after the big fight. You see Khonshu standing above a big clock, and the clock is set at midnight. Now, in the comics, Midnight Man has his name because he steals antiques at midnight. Again, kind of lame as far as your naming convention goes, but okay. I mean, you're very literal with, I steal stuff at midnight, I'm the Midnight Man. You got it. So I wonder if this is just a nod to Midnight Man, or if this is, did he maybe steal something? Like, I mean, we saw Mark throw a moonerang at him, and it stuck in him as he, like, drifted into the mist, which is very, like, I mean, okay, we get it. He's alive. He survived that. But do you think that maybe he took that moonerang and is somehow like reverse engineering it into some sort of weapon for himself?
It's possible. I was looking up some images and it seems like he has some sort of knife, and that's how he fights with Moon Knight with some kind of blade against each other. But speaking of that, we even see Layla, her necklace like takes it apart and it's like two knives.
Yeah, which was interesting. But then she didn't pick it back up. She just stabbed that guy in the left. And I was like, cool. Wouldn't you want to hold on to that? The one thing I did not see this episode, let me know if either of you saw it, and I'll look it up really quick. I did not see the QR code this episode. I thought that it was.
Oh, I didn't see one either.
I thought that it was maybe on her passport, but it was too stretched for that. So unless my phone just couldn't read it because it was stretched, I don't know.
I didn't see it, but I watched it on my iPhone. So
let's see. Someone surely knows exactly where it is.
Twitter.
Right? I haven't seen anything on Twitter.
Usually it's the first thing I see when after I watch
I didn't
an episode,
see a QR code in this one.
And maybe they just didn't have one. They just gave us the 2 free comics and we're like, all right, that's it.
Which is strange. You think they would like they would do one for like the introduction of Midnight Man or something.
I thought that it was a really cool idea for them. I mean, it's not like they're giving you like a free omnibus comic or something like that. It's like
Right.
$1 comic. That
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a cool idea, something new for them to do to pull people in and explain these characters a little bit more. But who knows? Maybe it's there and we just haven't found it yet. In a couple days,
Yeah.
someone will be like, "Here it is." So we'll keep you all posted if we find out. But yeah, the episode kind of ends with Mark and Steven and Khonshu all kind of working together as a team, as one happy family person. They put together the star chart, which ironically is in the shape of a star. So that was there's a lot of on the nose stuff in this episode.
Yeah.
Like, we get it. It makes a star chart and it looks like a star. Like, okay. And then I feel like with the technology that we have already seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it seems ridiculous that the only way that they can figure out what the night sky looked like was for Khonshu and Mark, or whatever, Steven, to work together to literally rewind the sky.
Yeah, especially when we have examples from our way less technologically advanced universe of scientists doing this recently. Like, yeah, that was... I was even saying that, I was like, are they seriously just moving the universe to use this map? Okay, no. Just talk to... What do you call it? Not a space doctor. What do you call it?
A space doctor. No, yeah.
Astrologist.
Space doctor.
An astronomer, somebody. Yeah. And they can be like, okay, hold your horses. Please don't rearrange the cosmos. I can help you figure out what it looked like. Give me a day, give me a place.
But also, like, what are the ramifications of him twisting the sky like that? Like,
everyone would probably die in reality.
Yeah, that's what I kept thinking. I was like, how is just the sky change? Is it just a visual effect, or like, is he literally rewinding the universe outside of Earth? Like,
yeah, I wish they'd go into more detail on that.
Are they back now? Did they go back to normal?
I thought, I had the same mindset because I'm like, look at this nice fancy tablet. Like, you couldn't just punch in a date and it just kind of
find the star chart. And then she literally has to like run around with it while they're holding the sky still and like scan the stars. And I was like, Tony Stark made a suit that let him fly around the world and be bulletproof. And they have to use magic to change what the sky looks like, to take pictures of it, to find a location that's really not that far away from them once she gets the location for it. So it's just, they could have flown a plane up in the sky and probably found the location faster without turning Khonshu into a stone. Like, I don't know. It's just, that was a little weird.
It's a little silly.
But we do finally have Khonshu as a statue. Now he is a like 6-inch tall statue, which is a little different. In the comics, it is like a 12-foot tall stone statue. So I don't know if this is just a nod to that, maybe. Like, he's finally in a statue. Or if once Mark saves Khonshu, maybe that's when we're going to get statue Khonshu, where it's like maybe he can no longer like pull Khonshu out of that stone and into himself, but he'll have to like transfer Khonshu from that statue into a bigger statue that he keeps at his house or something. I don't know. I would like it to maybe go that way a little bit more, just because that is the most, I don't know, recent thing that I have seen him as. So I was like, oh, this is cool, like a statue. But then, it was a tiny little stone trinket. So I was like, oh, okay. Maybe not. I don't know what's going on here.
Fits in his pocket.
Yeah, and what's stopping Arthur from stealing it? Like, Arthur just picks it up at the end of the episode, and I was like, what if he breaks it? Or is that how you let Khonshu out? You break it and then he's free? Or, like, do you break it and then he's dead? Like, what? we didn't get any rules for how the statue works.
Out of an abundance of caution, wrap it in bubble wrap.
Well, and even I assume Osiris, who was like the lead god, when Arthur's like, "Can he hear us?" He's like, "We think so." And I was like, "You don't know? You don't know how your own magic works? Like, I don't understand. This seems like that. Like, can he hear us? Seems like a question that we would ask on the podcast. Like, I wonder if he can hear people." And then we would probably never get the answer. And then instead what they did was they took that and they put it in the episode and they still didn't give us an answer. And it was like, what is this? What is happening right now? So I guess we'll have to find out next week how, first of all, who's in charge of Mark/Steven's body. And do you think they'll get Khonshu back next week? Or do you think it'll be more of a Mark Steven and insert other name here week?
What's a really dumb name we can call him until we figure out what his real name is?
I mean, well, we know the name, or I know the name that everyone's thinking, or the personality.
Was it Joe or something?
Jake Lockley.
Yes.
Oh man.
Who, coincidentally enough, is a cab driver, I think, right?
Yeah,
And
he's a street smart cabbie.
Yeah.
Who knows all the things.
So the fact
but
that
maybe
he woke up after blacking out the first time in a cab, I thought was interesting.
Yeah. Because at this point it's like he can't really get the suit, right?
I don't know. I don't know if the suit is directly tied to Khonshu alone, or if like the suit is something that Mark can summon and Khonshu's presence is more of just like a guiding voice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Arthur has said multiple times that he used to be the avatar for Khonshu.
Mm-hmm.
He did say something about the suit, I think. So like maybe the suit is tied to the avatar. I don't know. I don't know how that works. I don't know, like, is Mark passed out until Khonshu comes back? It's all a mystery.
Yeah.
Like next week could be a Layla only episode. I don't know. Guess we'll find out.
We need answers. Yeah. Give us answers. I'm ready. I'm ready for episode 4.
Guys, we might have skimmed over the greatest scene in this entire episode.
I think I know what you're about to say.
Is it? Okay.
Go.
So at the very beginning, whenever he's getting into the fight with the dude, and the dude just like keeps flipping his knife and doing weird stuff, and he's like, "What?" And then the guy is like, he licks his knife, and mid-lick, he just knocks him in the face. I was watching this at work, and I shrieked so loud. I'm sure somebody in a neighboring classroom heard me. That was the funniest thing I've seen so far on this show. And I couldn't, in all good conscience, let us in this episode without mentioning it.
And that was it. That jogged my memory. It was a mixture of like, this is like Brendan Fraser's The Mummy and Indiana Jones.
Yes. Yes, it was a very Indiana Jones nod of flourishing the sword and him just being like, "What are we doing? Are we dancing or are we fighting?"
Yeah. It's just waiting for him to like do his little dance moves, and then he just shoots him in classic indie fashion. I thought you were going to talk about the moment where Steven just tells everyone to chill the F out.
Oh, that was cute too. Yeah. That was really cute. But
that was, I think.
But no, I was just like, what is? At first, even I was like, what is he doing with that knife? And Mark is like, okay.
Yeah.
Do either one of y'all watch Futurama?
Yes.
Okay. I've seen Does Arthur remind y'all a little bit of Old Man Waterfall, the lawyer?
Yeah.
Where he says like all nice cutesy stuff, and then he's like, "Yes, I'm a Satanist."
Yeah.
Or he'll just like slip in something really bad that he does.
He is, and he has that weird vibe too about him, where it's like, "Yeah, I'm trying to help everybody, and also I'll kill your children, and I'm also gonna go find this tomb." Yeah, It's
okay to do murder if they might eventually be bad.
Well, really quick, jumping back to great scenes we kind of skimmed over. I think my favorite part of the entire episode was when Steven came out as Mr. Knight, told everyone to chill out, and then they started fighting, and then he very quickly was like, Mark, take over. Mark, take over. I thought that was the funniest thing. I was like, oh my gosh, we're finally getting to a point where like it is this funny teamwork thing. It's less like, I mean, Khonshu makes a weird comment about like, don't let Steven take over. He won't give you control again. But like, I feel like we're past that with Steven and Mark. We're to a point where like they really are working together. Although, yes, it seems a little sped along. We didn't really see them form any sort of friendship. It was just sort of like, I don't like you. Wait a second, I do like you. We're friends. So, but I kind of like that aspect of like they know when whose strength is what and when to
exactly. It's like, hey, you're good at, it's like 21 Jump Street, right?
Yeah.
It's like they have that moment like, hey, you're really good at this, right? I'll teach you this stuff. Like, come on, let's work together.
Yeah. So I really enjoy that, and I hope that once they, I guess, learn who this other personality that they have, that will have this sort of, maybe we'll have a really cool scene where like he needs to solve a bunch of puzzles and win a bunch of fights and do some crazy stuff, and so like we see him like transform multiple times in one scene to like tackle each problem with the personality that is best suited for that problem. I think it's a cool way to think about this superhero.
Yeah.
Using his multiple personalities to his advantage. So, like you said, we're halfway through. We've only got 3 more of these, so they better be good and long. The next one better be like 2 hours on a feature-length film.
I know, right?
Well, any final thoughts on this week's episode?
Give us more personalities. I'm ready for it.
Me too. Well, definitely join us next week. Like Luke said, the next episode is the episode that everyone who got to see it early has been losing their minds about, which seems like Disney's sort of MO, right? They really want us to really like the 4th episode. It only sucks that we only get 6 episodes. So, but hey, I'll take it. 6 is better than 0. So yeah, we'll find out next week what the big to do is. Maybe it's all fake. Everyone's lying to us. We're gonna watch it. It's just gonna be a normal episode. I don't know. I don't get my hopes up.
I'm ready.
All right. Any great one-liners this week? I don't know any multiple personality one-liners, so I was just trying to think, like, is that even a thing in movies? Someone with a bunch of The Mask, maybe.
It makes me think of that movie Identity with John Cusack.
Yeah.
Where they're all in the hotel. It's just raining the entire time. Can you imagine filming that?
So now that you said that, I think my one-liner is just going to be John Cusack. And that's only because every time I hear his name, it makes me think that John Cusack is like a verb. Like John Cusack is something you do. I don't know. Every time I hear his name, I just think John Cusack.
John Cusacking is being really vulnerable in an adorable way.
Perfect. See you guys next week.